People love to quote Matthew 7 to Christians. Judge not that you be not judged. Even people who don't know the Bible know that line. And honestly, I get why. Because nobody wants to feel judged. Nobody wants to feel condemned. Nobody wants to feel like they're being looked down on. But here's the problem. These verses are often used in a very self-serving way. Not as a call to humility, but as a shield from any kind of truth, correction, or accountability. So what did Jesus actually mean? He says, "Judge not that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you will be judged. And with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you." See, Jesus isn't saying truth doesn't matter. He's not saying right and wrong don't exist. He's not calling us to moral silence. He's warning us about how we judge and why we judge. Because there's a kind of judging that isn't discernment. It's superiority. It's condemnation. It's treating someone like a case to win instead of a person to love. Then Jesus gives this picture that's almost funny until it hits you. Why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? In other words, why are you obsessed with someone else's small flaw while ignoring your own massive flaws? And then he says it straight. Hypocrite. First, remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the plank, the speck, from your brother's eye. Notice what Jesus doesn't say. He doesn't say, ignore the speck. He doesn't say, everyone's truth is their own truth. He doesn't say, never address anything. He says, start with yourself. Deal with your own pride, your own hypocrisy, your own sin, your own motives. Check your own heart. Because the goal isn't to shame your brother. The goal is to help your brother. And that's the tension Christians feel all the time, isn't it? We're called to be bold in our faith. We're called to stand firm. We're called to speak the truth. And we're also called to love our neighbor as ourselves. How do we reconcile that? Here's the way I've come to see it. Being bold doesn't mean being brutal. Standing firm doesn't mean standing over people. And truth without love isn't truth being delivered the way Jesus intended it. It becomes a weapon. Matthew 7 isn't an excuse for Christians to never speak up. And it's not permission for anyone to say, don't ever challenge me. It's a command to check my posture before I check your behavior. Because when I go at someone with a critical spirit, what I'm really doing is placing myself on the throne as judge and jury. But when I go at someone with humility, aware of my own plank, I can speak truth with compassion. That's what Jesus is calling us to do. Discernment without condemnation. Conviction without hypocrisy. Clarity with humility. And that's also why this verse gets thrown at Christians so much. Because people have experienced Christian judgment that didn't look like Jesus at all. It looked like pride. It looked like contempt. It looked like condemnation. And if we're honest, sometimes that criticism is fair. So here's the takeaway I'm trying to live by. Before I point out the speck, I check for the plank. Before I correct, I examine my motives, my heart. Before I speak, I ask, am I trying to help or am I trying to win? And when I do speak, I remember the person in front of me isn't my enemy, they're my neighbor. That's how we reconcile it. Not by choosing between truth and love, but by holding them together the way Jesus did. If you've wrestled with that tension, wanting to stand firm in your faith without becoming judgmental, that's exactly why I wrote Opinionated, Not Judgmental. Because the world doesn't need Christians who are quieter. It needs Christians who are clearer and kinder and more like Christ while we're addressing perceived wrongs. And that starts with removing the plank first.